this episode of CNC Workshop. This episode is about software. The particular software that we will be using is Vectric's V-Carve Pro. We're going to show you how to use the software to create a very simple project, a platter. The main topics for today are create a job, overview of the drawing tools, designing a project, creating the tool paths. To get a free trial version of the software, go to Vectric.com. The first thing you got to do is create a job. Well, when you create a job, you got to open the software, create a new file, and you come to this job setup menu. In this job setup menu, you have several options. Single-sided, double-sided, a rotary project. You can make the sizes that you need to be, where you want the zero position, where you want the XY datum. That's basically your starting point of 0, 0 for X and Y. Modeling resolution, that shows you how fast it updates and what color of wood. So we have a single-sided project. Our project width is 10 inches. Our height is 10 inches. Our thickness is 1 inch. And we're going to do our zero position off the material surface. We're going to do our datum position in the middle. I like doing that on some projects because it makes things easier to orientate. Standard and a dark wood. And we're going to say OK. Now this here is the size of our material. 10 by 10. Okay. So we now have to make our project. And a kind of an overview of the drawing tools that we have is we can create a vector, make a circle, an ellipse, a square, a rectangle, a different size polygon, stars, straight lines, curved lines, textures, text, etc. We can also transform objects. This is to move it. This is to select and change the size. This is to rotate it. This is to make mirror images. This is to distort the image. And this is to align it. And then we have editing parts down here. And then offset parts down here. And we're going to talk about quite a few of these as we go along in the designing of our project. So, we have a project. We know what we're making. We want to make a platter. And our platter is basically a square. So we're going to come up here to the rectangle, draw a rectangle. And there's a couple ways you can do this. You can just freehand it. Okay, or you can come in here and tell it what size you want. Remember, we want it 9 by 9. Also, you can tell it, do you want square corners? Do you want radiused external corners? Or do you want radiused internal corners? Well, I want radiused external corners because I want these to be nice and rounded off. Then hit apply. You'll notice that it makes it the size that we wanted it to be. But I also want this to be in the center. And there's a real easy way of doing this. Make sure that you have your rectangle highlighted. Go over here to where the Align Select Objects are. In this top one, it says Align to the Material. What that's going to do is align this particular object to your material or to this center. This here is to align it to a selection, which we'll show you in a little bit. So I want to align this absolutely in the middle. So click here. Voila, we're there. So now I have my square. This is going to be basically my platter size. But I need to make a wall here, a thickness here. How can I easily do that? Well, you select my rectangle and we go down to this thing. It's called offset. And what offset does is tell it to go make another object a certain distance from what you're at right now. Well, we want to go outward. I want to go 1/4 of an inch, say offset, and it offset it by 1/4 of an inch. That went outside. If I want the absolute dimension on the inside to be 9, or if I want the outside to be 9, what I would do is move it inward. Then offset it in, and it puts my dimension on the inside. So now I have my walls. Okay, I need a cup holder. And I'm going to put a cup holder down in this corner. Cup holders generally are round. And cup holders, there's two ways you can do it, either the diameter or the radius. I'm going to use the diameter. Most cups are around 3 1/4, 3 1/2. So we're going to make it 3 1/4. Well, if I don't know what the decimal equivalent of something is, I can have the software do the work. I could go 3 and 1 divided by 4 and say equal, and it automatically gives me the decimal equivalent. So that's something that's kind of cool to do. There's my circle. Oh, it's not in the place I wanted it. Well, that's no big deal. Double click on it, and I can drag it to wherever I want it to be. And I've determined that I wanted it down in this corner, remember? Now, I need a wall on this too. So how did I do it before? Click on it, offset, and instead of going inward, because we don't want to make it smaller, I'm going to go outward and offset it outward. Cool. I'm good with that. Close that out. Now, these corners are kind of sharp here, and I don't want that. That's going to be kind of hard to machine. So I want to kind of make a gentle curve from here to here. Well, I can go to either draw an arc or draw a curve. Arc is usually 3 points. So if I would go like here to here and say, okay, arc it, I really don't like the way that looks. So I can close out of it, go back. I'm going to go to the lines here. This here, what it does, as you put the dots in, it makes a more gentle radius. Okay? And I'm going to do the same for the bottom here. I'm going to start about right here, come down to here, come to here, come to here. Okay? Not too bad. Not the greatest, but not too bad. So, I can go now in to edit all of this stuff. Okay? The first thing I'm going to do to clean this up a little bit is get rid of some of these lines. So I'm going to come here to go what we call the trim tool, and it looks like a pair of scissors. When the scissors are open, that means it can cut. Clean up, clean up, clean up, clean up, clean up, clean up. And if I look right here, I want to get rid of that. Okay. You'll notice it kind of messed this up a little bit. Well, that's no real big deal. You can always go back and undo wherever I ended up doing that. The reason why it cut all that out is because these are not attached yet. How can I make that happen? Well, you see where these go together here? Let's try cutting this piece right here and see what happens. Sometimes it's the order you do it that makes a big difference. See? Now I can go in and cut all this other stuff out, and it's not going to affect that one there. Okay, not too bad. So let's go in here now and clean it up a little bit. We'll go into what we call Node Edit. And what Node Edit does is come in here and highlight where all the nodes are. And these nodes are basically points. And you'll notice in this one here we have hardly none, but in this one here we got several. Well, the less you have, a lot of the times the smoother the curve is going to be. So let's get rid of some of these points in here. And also, if you have less curves, it makes it machine easier too, or smoother, I should say. Now, what I'm doing is, see these little green handles? I can set there and they're change the smoothness of the curve. I can do the same thing up here. Set there and come on, there you go. I can set there and say edit the polyline, or I can set here and say smooth it. Okay, and I can come in and I can get rid of some of these points here. And again, just like I did on the bottom, I can play with these a little bit and get them to come in. Now, if you hadn't noticed, we have two different sections here. We can marry these together. You choose both by using the Shift key and come over to here and say join. And what it will do is take all of these and make it one line. Okay, now you notice right here it's kind of sharp. And I'm not really happy with that, but I can change that. I can change that. I can bring this down a little bit. Bring this down a little bit. And then smooth it out. See how much better that looks? And I can make them now one solid line. Okay? And if I don't like that still, I can still come down here, drag this down a little bit, and just move this in a little bit. See how much smoother that looks? Okay, I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that. One other thing I want to do to this in the designing process is I want to put my name in it. Or let's say somebody else's name, but I'm going to put mine. Again, I can drag it up here, put it anywhere I want it. And let's suppose I want it dead in the center. Remember how we do our alignment? Okay. I want to align my name to this area here. I go to align to a selection, and I could put it absolutely in the middle, which would be there. I don't think that looks that great. So I'm going to undo it. I can come over and align it to the center. I like that look better. Close out. I'm done. Now, at this point, if I'm happy and satisfied with things, I can go ahead and now go to setting up my toolpaths. And that's the next part, is setting up the toolpath. Creating toolpaths. In this section, we're going to create a tool, make a basic toolpath, make a basic pocket path. We're going to use a clearance tool, a profile tool, and add tabs. We're going to preview everything and then save it with our post processor. That's what we're going to do in this section. So the first thing that we're going to do is come over here and put our toolpath menu up. Remember, this here is a pocket that we want in, and this is a pocket. So that's going to be the first thing that we do, is make two pockets. Come over here to the pocket toolpath, and we're going to highlight both areas that we want the pocket. Now, you have cutting depths here. The starting depth is dependent upon what you're doing, but with this instance, we're going to start at the very top. So what I'm doing is that I'm going to go from 0. So that's what this is. Remember, my material is 1 inch thick, so I want to cut my pocket down 3/4 of an inch. Now, I got to select a tool. The tool that I'm going to select is a radius end mill, which is right here. But I could make a new end mill. Let's suppose I went out and bought a radius end mill, and I need to enter those dimensions. So you would come to radius end mill, And then it would ask you some questions. How big is it? What is the tip radius, which is this radius right here? Pass depth. How deep do you want each pass to go? How much step over do you want? Well, if you're finishing, you want less step over. When you're roughing, you want more step over. How many inches per minute do you want? Okay. And I usually go about 200. How many inches per minute do you want for the plunge rate? I usually do about 30. And then say apply. And what that's going to do is give me a new radius end mill. Okay? Now, I went with the end mill that I already had. I selected that. The next thing is I'm going to do an offset, and what that does basically make it going in a circle. I'm going to plunge my ramp, so my plunge will not go directly down like a drill bit. It will ease in. Go to calculate. Okay, this is my rough cut. So I preview this tool path, and it basically shows me what it goes through to cut that out. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to just leave it at that because I like the way that looks. So that's my pocket. Now, you might want to give it a very peculiar name, and we're going to just call it platter. Pocket number 1, and that's where we're at there. Now, we're going to close out of that, and we need to now cut the outside dimension. Okay? So what we're going to do there is we're going to come up here to profile. Start depth is 0 again. Our cut depth is going to go 10 thousandths past. I'm using a 1/4 inch end mill. I'm going to do it on the outside. So it's going to do it out here. I'm going to ramp my plunge. And I'm going to do something here. If I would just cut this through, I would have have loose pieces. Could catch on my bit, and then it's going to hurt something or break something. So what I want to do is the thing that they call add tabs. And what this does is add a little tab, and I'm going to add 3 of them. One here, one here, and one here. What that does is just leave a sliver of material there so these aren't exactly all the way apart. If I close this, I'm going to call this platter profile. Now I'm ready to calculate it. It tells me that it's going to cut through. I already know that. There's that. I can preview it. Here's your tabs right here. One here, and there's one up here. Right here. Those are your tabs. Pretty good. I like it. The last thing I want to do is the name. Okay, the name is done with V-Carve. Again, my start depth, it says it's 0. I'm not going to start at 0 for this for the very fact I don't need to cut a bunch of air. So what I'm going to do is say I'm going to start at 0.74. Okay? Which is just a little bit less than 3/4 of an inch. Here's my V-bit tool. I went and selected it out of my list. It's a 60-degree V-bit, 1/4 inch size. I said OK. I've got it selected here. You don't have no ramp moves or anything like that. I'm going to calculate it. But I want to put my name in here too. Rick Platter. And what that basically does is if you got a whole bunch of names that you're doing for a bunch of different people, it kind of gives you an idea where you're at. Calculate it. Oh, I forgot to pick the name. So let's go back and do this. Go back to here. And let's pick the name so that that's what it cuts out. Recalculate it. Now it's going to do what we want it to do. Oops. Preview it. There it is. I like that. That's pretty cool. Okay. Now I've got all my tool paths figured out. The only last thing that I got to do here is save my tool paths so I can use it for the machining. Come to here. And the most important piece here is to make sure you have the correct post processor for your particular machine. I happen to have a CNC Shark. I got a spindle on it. I have a little spindle delay, so that's what that says. And I'm going to pick my pockets first. Now, if I would pick all of them, it would say I can't do that because they're all different tools. The only time you can do more than one tool path is if they're the same tool. So, save the tool path. I need to save it somewhere. I can save it here. Save it as tool path. There I go. Do the next one. Save. I like that name. Save it. Last but not least is the name. Save it. Okay. Now, the last thing we want to do is save our work. And we can call it whatever. We're going to call it Rick Platter. And save it. And that's it. Now you have all the files to make the platter. In the next episode, I'll show you how to machine the project. Until then, happy carving. Thank you for watching. Make sure you support all of our sponsors. And I'll see you next episode. Remember, hit the subscribe button and so you're the first to hear about all updates and new projects. And thank you